Hope everybody's doing well. It's good to be back. I don't know if anybody in here was, but I understand some of our media might have made the trip across the pond over to Paris for the ladies' games. So that was, I'm sure, a great opportunity for the team and everybody else that went. It's definitely a bucket list trip for me at some point. Definitely want to go visit Jim Morrison's grave over there, as well as all the other standard Paris attractions, sit in some cafe and people watch and do things like that. So probably have a little ways to go, few more games to coach, and 1.5 kids to still put through college before we start thinking about that. But it's there in the back of my mind somewhere. Need about 2 weeks. You got to do the standard Paris stuff, keep Jen happy, and then from there I've got a plan. I'm going to do a reverse swing of Patton's Third Army, okay, the Falaise Gap where we encircled the Germans, then work my way back, St. Mary-Glisse where our airborne landed on D-Day, and then each of the 5 D-Day beaches, and then work along the coast, get to Dunkirk, visit some of the Northeast France World War I battlefields, maybe swing over to the Ardennes forest and then down to the Maginot Line, maybe visit Verdun. So I don't think Jen's real interested in about 90% of that, but maybe she'll tag along. That'd be good. Glad we won the game last week. Very glad we won the game. These kids have worked really hard, and we've had some challenging times and some close losses and some ups and downs and all that. So it's very satisfying as a coach to see them, overcome that. At the same time, I don't think there's any question we were sloppy and lethargic at times in that game, and so there's a lot to learn from there. You have to watch those kind of games with an honesty and an openness about it, and walk away being willing to learn from that experience, and I certainly hope we do, and we have an opportunity to show that we learned from that experience by coming out and playing with tremendous effort and energy this Saturday against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is a program that I have a place in my heart for them. I was always one of those guys that liked to root for underdogs growing up, the academies and some of the private schools that maybe don't have some of the advantages that other schools do, and when those teams have had success, I've always kind of felt good about it. I think that's really good for college football when you see teams like that have good years and so forth. Of course, now there's certainly 1 week out of the year where I don't root for Vanderbilt, and that's this week. So we're going to do everything we can to find a way to win this game. Some of you may recall, my first year as head coach at Lehigh, we played Furman in the playoffs. That was a Furman team that went to the national championship game in 2001. Bobby Johnson became the coach at Vanderbilt. I had a chance to go visit him and spend some time there when I was at Elon, which was great. And I remember Vanderbilt winning the Music City Bowl on a field goal in the fourth quarter. I think it was Christmas Day, and I was at my parents' house, and my mom's telling me, come to dinner. I'm like, no, Vanderbilt's got a chance to win this bowl game. I'm sitting right here in front of the TV and watching the end of this thing. And now, Clark Lee, I think, is doing a great job. He's an alum, and he's fully invested in that place, and they've made a huge commitment to him. And there's actually 3 guys on that staff that are former assistants of mine at Ball State. Justin Lustig, who's their special teams coordinator, who does a great job. I think he's definitely one of the best in the country, and a guy that I learned from when I was the head coach at Ball State, and we became very close and still are. And Joey Lynch, who's the offensive coordinator, was a guy I retained at Ball State when I got there, as son of Bill Lynch, who's a former Ball State and Indiana coach, great coaching family, maybe the greatest coaching family that's originally from Indiana, the Lynch family, and then Alex Bailey, who joined us as receivers coach my last year at Ball State. So they've got some really good coaches on that staff. They do an outstanding job preparing those kids, and this is a group of kids that are playing with a lot of zeal right now. There's a lot of effort and energy, and you see it on special teams, you see it on offense and defense, and they've been in a lot of close games, and you could see that they're getting better. And it might not show every week in terms of the results, but the quality of the players are getting better, and how hard they're playing is definitely getting better. And from a special team standpoint, they are getting results, because right now they're the top-ranked unit in the SEC. So they're the number 1 ranked punt unit. They're 3rd in punt return. They're 2nd in kickoff return. And I think their worst unit is kickoff, and they're still in the top half of the league in kickoff. So this is a special teams unit that's very multiple. Jaden McGowan, number 6, started the year off with a 97-yard kickoff return. He's had several other good returns since then. He breaks a lot of tackles. He runs hard. He runs with really good vision, and he's quick, and he's hard to bring down. And then their punter, number 45, Hayball, if I'm pronouncing that right, he's had an exceptional year. Tops in the SEC. He rugby punts, he angle punts. He's averaging almost 50 per punt. He's had several hit the ground and roll for really long yardage type punts. But this guy can really swing the field position. They're very multiple on that unit, so they give you a lot to prepare for. And like I say, they're just playing good quality special teams overall with some good players. McGowan started returning punts as well last week. They made a little switch there mid-game, and he had an explosive return against Auburn. So I would imagine that's something that they'll continue to do with the productivity he's shown. So big challenge for us this week. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see how we respond from last week, and we've dug ourselves a little hole here, and let's fight like heck to get out of it, and that's what I'm ready to do, and I'm excited to see our kids do the same.
With your punter and maybe some of the numbers that aren't as high as they've been in the past, how have you guys approached him and trying to get him maybe a little more consistent, or do you think he needs to be a little more consistent?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing about Kai is I don't have to be hard on Kai, because Kai is going to be very diligent and self-critical in a good way, not at a point where he ever gets himself down, but he's going to challenge himself to respond and get better. And we've certainly been putting in some extra time, whether it be on the field or watching film and just talking about the technique of his drops and the technique of his strike. And for me, again, I've told you this, I don't claim to be a guru when it comes to that technique, but when you watch a player as much as I have watched him the last 3 years, you get to know the nuances, and you could see even in real time live, hey, this ball might have been dropped a little bit too far inside or a little bit too far outside, or did you come across your body on that one? So it's with him and our relationship, our rapport, it's very much a conversation and back and forth, and he's very good about giving feedback. So, but he's been putting in a lot of time. He's in this building a lot, trying to get treatment and take care of his body to try and stay fresh. And we've certainly been putting in some extra time in parts of practice where normally he might be more in a rest mode. All right, hey, let's take an extra 5 minutes to work on this or to work on that. But you got to be careful that you don't just go out there and punt the ball an extra 50 times and you're tired come Saturday. So there's a balance in there, and that's why it's important to have those conversations, because you're trying to get feedback, and sometimes rest is the best answer too.
Pete, more so going back to last week, because we didn't have a chance to talk with you. At that point, 2-6 heading into last week's game. This is a very young special teams unit when you go across the board. How important is it to be able to continue to preach to these guys that, the fight's not done? Because some of these guys' high school seasons are over. They're not used to having to play those extra couple games, and to continue to get on them, to know the importance, especially when it comes to playing on special teams.
Yeah, there's no question. And I think Shane's done a good job of trying to strike that balance of understanding that it is a long season. And so, you don't want to you have to work really hard every week, and you have to be fully invested every week. But you also have to keep that in the back of your mind that a lot of these guys that are out there right now, number one, might not have been playing special teams before, and number two, might have been transitioning into basketball season right now. You can do certain things over the course of the week in your practice schedule and in your meeting schedule to try to at least be aware of that and cognizant of that. But at the same time, you got to get ready to play. And when you play these noon games, you lose a little bit of time on Saturdays too, where maybe you would have been excited to do a walkthrough in the morning because you knew you're waiting around all day to play a night game. Now with a noon game, you're going to miss out on that because you're just getting up and having your pregame meal and getting ready to head to the stadium. So I think it's important to be really organized, to be thoughtful when it comes to the players and their mindset and where they're at physically, but also looking very closely at the week and what you need to get done to have them as best prepared as you can. I think the biggest thing too is the focus that it takes. So even if you're backing off a little bit physically, or you're trying to scale back a little bit, cut 5 minutes here or 5 minutes there from practice time, knowing it's a long season, that doesn't mean that you can lose focus and go out there and not be fully prepared. And one of the things I like to do in the hallway or on the way out to the practice field, I'll grab a guy and, hey, did you watch that clip of punt from yesterday? Where maybe there was an issue, and you'll know right away. Hey, did he pull that up on his laptop when he was back at his room or not? And I think a lot of our guys are still doing those things, and that's an important part of the training is to. For every player, there needs to be a degree of coaching yourself and a curiosity, right? A curiosity that, maybe I didn't execute that technique great on that play. Let me go back and watch it versus waiting for my coach to show it in the meeting 2 days later.
Pete, what do you think about the idea of adding helmet communication in college football, and what do you make of this sign stealing scandal that, I don't know, you may have read about?
Yeah, just a little bit. So I am very traditional when it comes to the game and sort of preserving the game. So there's parts of me that sort of like the fact that we do have to signal and so forth. I do like the fact that we're a little bit different than the NFL in some ways, because that's what makes it college football and not just football across the board, whether it be rules of the game or, the technology pieces. But that being said, nothing ever stays the same in life. And so I have seen a lot of change in the game over 30 years, and I'd like to think that I've been adaptable to that and have embraced that when the changes have come. Personally speaking, I think I'm much, much more adept at using technology right now than I was probably when I was a head coach, because I wasn't making as many cut-ups and having to really know the intricacies of some of the XL and, our video, what's called Exos. So I feel like, I've done a pretty good job of progressing at this point in my career with that stuff. So, there's parts of me that like to see the game remain the game, but you have to adjust and adapt to the times and embrace whatever comes down the pipe. And I'm sure this is going to shed a tremendous amount of light on that, and I could see potential changes coming as a result of this. So it'll be interesting to see where it all goes.
Hey, Pete, you mentioned earlier that Vanderbilt's punter punts for a pretty high average. Just in general with teams on punt coverage and on punt returns, is it always like I always want the punt returner to be exactly 45 yards from the line of scrimmage? Or is that something like, well, from week to week and from punter to punter and from punt to punt, you're constantly redoing the math and moving them up and down?
Yeah, so getting back to the technology, we have a lot of really good data at our disposal, and that doesn't mean that a team doesn't change. Vanderbilt has shown a willingness in our game in the last 2 years to do some different things schematically, and sometimes that includes where they might be kicking or punting the ball. So that it's very possible and even likely that you might see something different than what the data shows you. But there's certainly ample amounts of data there. And what I like to do is I like to study the film first and then go back to the data and see if the data confirms what my hunches are based on the film. Some other coaches might look at the data first and then say, okay, here's what the data is telling me. All right, now let me go watch the film. And maybe that goes back to Gene's question about me being a little bit more of a traditionalist. Like, give me some peace and quiet in my office. Let me go through all the video first, and then I'm going to go back and see if what's in the data confirms what I think I saw. And I don't always do it that way, but that's how I do it a lot of times. And then you have to trust your instincts a little bit too, to say, okay, we're not going to just live by what we're seeing. What are the hunches you have on what this team might present to you, but you are getting to a high level of detail with your returners where you want those guys to align. And then one of the things I always tell them is, don't forget about Mother Nature too, right? So we've had some pretty significant wind at Missouri, at Texas A&M. You're going to go out there, and that's where a good player has some awareness of, how is the wind going to affect this punt or affect this kickoff, and how do I have to adjust? So those are all things that, you're trying to coach those things right up until they take the field, and just get that last little nugget in their head. So hopefully they go out there and respond the right way.
You mentioned the biggest thing right now for your guys is to keep the focus. Early in that first quarter, Xavier Legette maybe didn't have the focus and
no question,
incurred a penalty. But then he comes right back and has probably his best game of the season. I saw you go over to him on the sideline, and maybe we're a little hot. But
well, you haven't been around me long enough. If you think I got hot there, that was like lukewarm.
Okay, then you were lukewarm.
Yes, lukewarm.
What do you tell a guy after something like that, and what does it say about a kid to respond in the way he did?
Yeah. So the great thing about X, and I've mentioned in here before about our relationship, we have a really good rapport, and if you have a good relationship, you can coach a guy hard, and in fact, you can coach a guy harder if you have a good relationship, right? Because you know that there's been enough built there that I hate to even say confrontational situation, because this is what we do. We coach. We have to give feedback. Like, to me, the way I was brought up in coaching, if a play goes by and I don't say something to somebody, I'm not doing my job, right? When it comes time for me to just stand there with my hands folded behind my back or put my hands in my pocket, all right, then we'll start talking about the trip to France, okay, or as I mentioned before, going down to Pawleys Island, right? It's go hard, and so, no, X is great. Like, he knew right away that it was a bad play, and great players are still going to have bad plays, right? That's just, I'm going to make a bad decision during a game. I'm going to make a bad decision in a game plan for the week, or what we chose to do at a period of practice or something. We're all human. All right, how do you respond? That's the key. How do you respond? And obviously he responded by going out there and having a really, really good day at receiver. Now, again, getting back to something I said earlier, are we learning? Are we, growing? And you need to keep doing that. You could be a fourth, fifth, even sixth-year player, right? And you hope that you're still seeing that kind of growth. You should be seeing even more exponential type growth in your young players. Some of these guys, Pup Howard, who's playing 2 or 3 special teams a week right now, and he's pretty much been doing that for most of the season. We're at a point now where you expect to see some real growth, right? Because he should be getting to a critical mass of plays that he's no longer really a freshman anymore. It's not like you're just throwing a guy out there, in week 9 or 10. This guy's played some. So how you respond to coaching. Are you coachable? And X is, at the top. I look forward to every one of these scouts that, the really thorough ones find their way to my office and they want to know, what's this guy like to coach on special teams? And he's been a pleasure for 3 years. All right. Appreciate it. Okay.